All right. So welcome to Trauma Sensitive Schools, Shifting to Partnership in Education and Society. I'm Sarah Saltee. I'm the Director of Leadership and Learning Programs at the Center for Partnership Studies. We're delighted to be hosting this webinar and so pleased to be bringing you this incredibly valuable content that we want to share with you today. We have actually been planning this webinar for many months now. And then when this pandemic upended so many of our lives and plans, we did some rapid adjusting, as everyone on this call can relate to. And 2 weeks ago, we offered a version of a webinar on trauma-sensitive schools that was specifically focused on COVID-19 response. If you didn't catch that, and would like to, we want to assure you that we'll send a link to the replay of that earlier webinar in your follow-up materials that will come to you by email after the webinar today. So, and if you did join us for that, welcome back. We're so happy you could join us again. Today, we're bringing you something a little closer to the webinar that we originally planned, but with slight adaptations to acknowledge and validate the experiences we're all having in this very particular historical moment. I want to, before I bring in our panelists today, do a few gratitudes. We want to thank Jason Campbell, who brought us all this, brought the Center for Partnership Studies together with our speaker, Mary, today, who then introduced us to Khayree. So thank you, Jason, for your partnership and support of the Center for Partnership Studies. And a big thank you to Ann Amberg, who you will meet in the chat box today. Ann is also part of the Center for Partnership Studies team. She's largely responsible for promoting and getting the word out about these webinars, and she is just a wonderful presence in the chat to answer your questions and share resources with you as we go today. So welcome and thank you to Ann. We also want to thank our co-sponsors. These are all organizations that have helped to get the word out about this webinar and who have been wonderful partners to us in supporting the effort to have you all know that this was happening. And if you are here because one of them sent you, please thank them for supporting this. So we want to thank Delaware Changing Lives, Gift Global, Youth Learning Institute Think Shops, the SUNY Oswego Teacher Opportunity Corps, Bree Mathers and her wonderful organization, Love the Skin You're In, Rainbow Lavina Healing Arts, and Crystal Gypsy Designs. Thank you all for your support of this webinar. I now want to welcome and bring in introduce you to our three wonderful panelists that we're so honored to be sharing space with today. First, I want to introduce Dr. Mary, who is coordinator of trauma-informed schools for the 169 school Metro Nashville Public School District. She is working at the district level to raise awareness of childhood and intergenerational trauma, using a collective impact framework to promote system-wide changes and implementation of school-wide trauma-sensitive practices. We are also joined by Khayree Bey, who is a teacher in the Colonial School District in Delaware. He was 2019 SHAPE Delaware's Health Teacher of the Year, and he's implementing an equity-based trauma-informed approach in his classroom based on the art of mindfulness, Kemetic yoga, and other self-care practices. And Khayree is also teaching other teachers, community, and staff to do the same. He serves on Colonial School District Educators of Color Committee, which focuses on equity and underrepresented populations in teaching by recruiting, assisting, and maintaining educators of color. So welcome, Khayree. And we also have with us Dr. Riane Eisler. Riane is an internationally known systems scientist, an attorney working for the human rights of women and children, and author of groundbreaking books such as The Chalice and the Blade, Our History, Our Future, The Real Wealth of Nations, Creating a Caring Economics, and most recently, Nurturing Our Humanity, How Domination and Partnership Shape Our Brains, Our Lives, and Our Future. Riane is the founder and president of the Center for Partnership Studies, which is dedicated to research and education on social and economic transformation. She's co-founder of CPS's Caring Economy campaign, which she'll speak a little bit about today, and with Nobel Peace Laureate Betty Williams of the Spiritual Alliance to Stop Intimate Violence, or SAVE. She is also editor-in-chief of the Interdisciplinary Journal of Partnership Studies, an online peer-reviewed journal housed at the University of Minnesota that was inspired by Dr. Eisler's work. So welcome to you as well, Riane. So our format today is that we will have presentations by each of our three panelists, followed by as much time as we can muster for questions from our attendees. So as you're listening today, if questions come to mind, please use your chat box to share them at any time, and we'll sort of collect those up and bring them forward during that question and discussion time. But we thought we would start today before we dive into Riane's presentation. I want to hand it over to Khayree to lead us in a moment of mindfulness to help us all sort of settle in and become present here together. So take it away, Khayree.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I just gotta, it's like, I do this every day in class. It's kind of odd that I haven't done it in a while with my students. I've been doing a lot of virtual. So this is kind of new, but I enjoy sharing the practice. And I'm going to combine two different practices. We're going to do the letting go breath with a calming breath. So just as I did before, I'm going to kind of get you to abdominally breathe. So I want you to stick your hand on your belly. I want you to sit up straight, aligning your head, neck, and spine. I'm going to guide you through 3 deep abdominal breaths using my little breathing ball that I use with my students. So as you inhale, I want you to push your belly out. And when you exhale, I want you to push your belly button to your spine. We're going to do that 3 times. So I want you to inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. One more time with me. Inhale, exhale. Now that we're breathing correctly, again, I want you to make sure your feet are grounded. You're sitting comfortably. If you are comfortable, I want you to close your eyes. If not, stare at something that's not moving on the ground. Lower your gaze. When you inhale, I want you to inhale through your nose and exhale out your mouth as if you are sighing. Make it so that you can hear it. Make it audible. So we're going to start at the sound of the bell, and I will guide you through. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. On your next inhale, I want you to raise your shoulders up as you inhale. And as you exhale, slowly lower your shoulders down and make it audible. Do that 3 times on your own. Inhale. One more time. I'm going to ring the bell one more time. Actually, I'm going to ring it 3 times. On the 3rd time, I want you to open your eyes and bring yourself back to the moment. Take one last deep breath with me and hold it. And sigh it out. I hope that brought a little bit of calm to your day. I know with all the all the news that's going on, the adjustment to being home, working from home, having your children and loved ones in such a small, close quarters there, it's a lot of stress. There's a lot of anxiety. And I hope this practice brought you a little bit of peace. And in the resources, there's a little bit of some spots that you can stop. We're offering some type of mindful guidance to teachers, educators, nurses, anyone that's really a caregiver out on the front lines right now, putting in that work. So, and I appreciate you all.
Thank you so much, Khayree, for helping us begin on just the right note. Much appreciated. So we want to turn next to Riane. And Riane, give me just a moment to pull our slides back up and get to the right spot. And then there we go. So whenever you're ready, let me just make sure you're the featured.
Yeah, I still see you talking, not me. So I don't know what the problem is there.
We're going to spotlight your video. There you go.
Hello. Hello.
So whenever you're ready, go ahead.
I'm ready. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
You can hear me. Well, good,
yes.
Because I don't want to talk to myself. I want to welcome all of you again at this time. And I hope you're all taking good care of yourselves and your loved ones in this time of crisis, of really unprecedented crisis that is causing so much suffering and yes, trauma, which, as you know, will be our subject following the webinar that we did 2 weeks ago. But the broader webinar that we had planned originally with, as Sarah said, a few modifications. And I want to start by saying, as you see in that slide, yes, we know it's a time of crisis, but it's also a time of opportunity because we cannot go back to the old normal in which even before this time, so many children were traumatized. So many millions of children relied on schools for food, when in this wealthy nation, 1/5 of all children lived in poverty because of an unjust and unsustainable economic system, a system we have to fundamentally change. And precisely of this crisis, when our economic system is in shambles, we can, and I would suggest to you, we must work together to provide a blueprint for what I've called a caring economics of partnerism, which I'll briefly touch upon today. But I want to start, as advertised, with trauma. And the fact that, as you will hear from the wonderful 2 educators, on this webinar on trauma-sensitive schools hosted by the Center for Partnership Studies, trauma is finally getting the attention it deserves, not only as an individual issue, but as a systemic social issue. Because it is a systemic social issue worldwide. As you will hear from our speakers that follow me today, there is growing recognition that we must work together, not only to support children and everyone really in managing the effects of trauma, but also to create social norms and policies that help prevent trauma from being so prevalent in the first place. And I'm going to start by offering a social and economic context for what our speakers will be sharing with you, which is trauma-sensitive educations, as well as a technology for moving from domination to partnership at the foundational levels of childhood and, yes, gender. As those of you familiar with my work know, I have a great deal of passion for this work, and that passion is rooted in my own traumas as a child refugee with my parents, because we were blessed to be able to escape from Nazi Europe. So my life's work has been exploring what really is needed, what kind of social and economic and cultural system is needed to prevent so much insensitivity, cruelty, violence, which led me to connecting the dots. And this is really vital because it's not done in conventional studies, between matters, yes, that we've been taught to either ignore or marginalize, like parenting, like gender equity, like domestic violence. I mean, in this crisis, we are hearing how many children and women are trapped in traumatic, abusive situations. Between gender equity, parenting, domestic violence, and intimate relations on the one hand, and the so-called big picture that's in our headlines always about economics, politics, and so on. Because my multidisciplinary research, and it's research that draws on systems analyses, studies of complex living systems from nonlinear dynamics, and what it reveals are two underlying social configurations which we really need to understand if we are to move forward: the partnership system and the nomination system. And because it's the tension between these two social configurations, these social systems, and not, as we're constantly told, between right, left, religious, secular, Eastern, Western, that's the real struggle for our future. Because consider, there have been unjust, unsustainable systems in all these conventional categories. Now, understanding the core configuration of these two systems makes it possible to recognize root causes of our challenges. And I should add that no society is a pure domination partnership system, but the lens, and this is a new lens, of the partnership and domination continuum, the social scale, makes it possible to see patterns, configurations, connections that are otherwise not visible. But most important, and I want to emphasize this, the partnership system provides a roadmap for the long-term strategies we need. It shows that cultural transformation to a partnership world requires that we focus on things that we are not used to focusing on. And could you go back to the old slide, please? because I want to go through these for a moment. We're not used to thinking of systems that way, but you can have rigid hierarchies of domination in both the family and state, rigid gender stereotypes, men over women, and quote, masculinity, the hard conquest, violence, right? And the soft, so-called feminine, caring, caregiving. You can have the devaluation of caregiving and of women in both right and left, in both religious and secular, in Eastern, Western. And yes, you can see violence in so many of these systems, from child and wife beating to warfare, which of course are needed to maintain these rankings. So these categories transcend the old thinking, but there is an alternative. And that's the partnership alternatives. I had to find names, to coin new names for these categories, because we are not used to thinking that way. So what's the difference? In both the family and family, yes, family, which is not considered in most social analyses, both the family and the state, the governing values are linking and mutual respect and what I call hierarchies of actualization. I had to coin new words rather than domination. And if we have time, I'll get back to that. Gender. We're so used to thinking of gender as just a women's issue, right? Well, it is a central social issue. First of all, the female and male forms are the two basic forms of humanity. And children learn early on in domination systems to think of women as the out group, right? And that's a mental map that then can translate to race, to religion, to ethnicity, to sexual orientation, and it does. But in the partnership system, you have gender partnership, and with it comes something very important in terms of the kind of economic and cultural values. The valuing of caring, caregiving, and nonviolence in women, men, and in social policy. And of course, the stories are different, and so is the language. But let's go to what I started to talk about, which is that the partnership system provides us a roadmap for the long-term strategies we need. It shows that cultural transformation to a partnership world, and it's always going to be relative, but closer to the partnership side, requires to focus on 4 cornerstones, and they're interactive cornerstones. Childhood, that's so basic. Many of you as educators know what neuroscience now shows, that the degree to which our early lives are times of indoctrination to the punitive authoritarian dynamics of domination systems, or to the ethos of nonviolence, mutual respect, and caring that characterizes partnership system, makes a huge difference. And very often it is teachers that have to provide that partnership alternative, even though so much in our educational system is still top down. It inherited from the domination system. Gender, as I said, what does it mean to be a woman or a man? What are we taught is feminine and masculine? It's basic. Economics, but a new way of structuring economics in which policies and practices recognize what neither capitalism nor socialist theory recognize: the foundational economic value of care and caregiving for human beings starting in early childhood and caring for our planet. That keeping that clean and healthy home environment that we think of as women's work, right? But that also translates to the planet, doesn't it? And it's been devalued in our economic system. And third, what I mentioned before, narratives language. whether the stories we tell and the words we use reinforce domination or challenge domination and assert the normalcy and desirability of partnership. Now, my most recent book, Nurturing Our Humanity, which just came out with Oxford University Press, and I have a wonderful co-author in it, the anthropologist Douglas Fry, it shows something that is absolutely relevant to this session. Domination systems are trauma factories. And yes, this trauma is most severe for groups at the bottom of the domination pyramid. Children, women, members of racial and religious and sexual minorities, and other so-called out groups. And of course, there's also trauma at the top of the pyramid because domination studies show, for example, extreme inequality, it creates stress even for the people on top. Now, neuroscience and human development research show something that I think many educators know today, that our brains are shaped by the interaction of genes and experience. So this old nature versus nurture controversy is pointless. It's the interaction, the gene expression. So that actually the structure of our brain, our neurobiology, is impacted, is directly impacted by family, but families don't arise in isolation from the larger social system, do they? So in Nazi Germany and Austria, where I was born, the ideal norm at the time that we had to flee the Nazis was a domination family, you know, authoritarian, highly punitive, rigidly male-dominated, the so-called traditional family that some people are trying here in this country to push us back to. Now, exposure in our earliest years to either domination or partnership relations and norms, I can't repeat this enough, impacts how our brains develop, because that is where, as you see in this slide, we first learn to, we observe and we experience, to either respect the rights of others, including ourselves actually, or where we first learn violence, cruelty, exploitation, oppression, prejudice as normal, even moral. Now, neuroscience also, however, shows something very, very important, which is emphasized in Nurturing Our Humanity. And this is hard science, quote unquote, that we're talking about, that contrary to both the story of original sin and the story of selfish genes, we are actually, as humans, wired for empathy and caring. That is, if it is supported rather than inhibited or compartmentalized by culture because of this interaction I've been talking about. So what this means, and I really can't emphasize this enough, trauma is not an individual issue. Trauma is a social issue that cannot be solved on the individual level. At best, we can have palliative add-ons. But to prevent so much trauma, because look, I mean, children, families, schools, everything is embedded in the larger culture. So to prevent trauma, we have to work at the level of the system as a whole. Now, trauma-sensitive school programs, they've been like the canary in the coal mine. They've highlighted social problems. But to prevent trauma, and this is really what I would like you to keep in mind, we need caring social and economic policies, like family supports like paid sick leave, economic supports for caregivers like caregiver tax credits, social security, for caregiving in families, and other new caring economic inventions. And I should add here that if you really think about it, had we had a caring economic system with these kinds of policies in place, our economy would not now be in the shape it's in. It would be far more resilient because people would already have in place the support they need for food, for shelter, for health care, and yes, for caring, for care work inside families, as well as giving it the real value that it merits in the market. Now, economic supports for caregivers, like I'm talking about, are possible. And this is the time to have us mobilize ourselves to come together. And one tool that we have provided through the Center for Partnership Studies are new ways of measuring economic health. This is very, very important because, well, we value what we measure and we measure what we value, don't we? And this is why I want to touch on this in closing. Reflecting the current economic systems, both capitalist and socialist, the measure that both use is GDP. But that measure not only includes activities, I mean, it's a crazy measure, it includes activities that actually take and harm life. You know that making cigarettes and the resulting medical bills, funeral bills, they're great for GDP. So are oil spills. I mean, the whole thing is crazy, but while it includes negatives as positives, it fails to give any value because neither Smith nor Marx gave it any value to the contributions of the three life-sustaining economic sectors that I emphasize in my book, The Real Wealth of Nations: the natural economy, the volunteer community economy, and the household economy. I mean, that work is supposed to be done for free. A lot of it is supposed to be, quote, women's work, right? To be done for free under the rigid domination system in a male-controlled households, which is still the case in many parts of the world today. Now, this is why we have developed social wealth economic indicators and why we're now condensing and updating them into a social wealth index, which will be one number that shows the economic return, because we have to start where people who control the resources are at. We have to show the economic value of government and business investments and the economic return from these investments in areas that actually produce better lives and greater well-being for families and communities. Caring for people, as I said, starting already before birth, but certainly at birth. And you know, we have the highest in this wealthy country maternal mortality rate of any developed nation. It's shameful. And of course, caring for nature. So I want to invite you, all of you, to learn more about this new tool and to promote it. And here is the website for you, centerforpartnership.org. And if you go to programs on the top bar, if you go to Caring Economy, Social Wealth Index, Social Wealth Economic Indicators. Now, look, I want to close by saying we have the power. I mean, cultures, economic systems, they're human creations. We can recreate them so that they're really humane and sustainable. So we can create the systems that support this cultural shift from domination to partnership. We can help each other at this time of crisis, provide each other with grounded hope by showing them that there is a partnership alternative. We can heal from the damage of domination relations. Yes, the traumas, that they cause. We can practice the skills of caring, empathic relationships, and this is fundamental. We can create systems and policies, which really also an educational policies that foster partnership. And with all of this in mind, I now want to turn it over to Dr. Mary, who's going to tell us about the wonderful district-wide model approach to trauma-sensitive education she is pioneering in Tennessee. Mary. I can't hear you, Mary.
Thank you so much, Riane. That's the perfect introduction to what I'd like to talk about. And I just want to say that I've been working to do this work for about 5 years in Metro Nashville Public Schools. Oh, hold on, I have to figure out my screen share. Here we go. Does that work? Can everyone see that now?
Yes,
Great.
that looks great.
So we've been working on this approach for about 5 years, the trauma-informed schools model. We're very much pioneering, and Khayree as well. This is an emergent movement in the education sector. But when I was introduced to your work by a friend and colleague, Jason Campbell, who was mentioned earlier, it was such a perfect intersection. I was able to see immediately that the trauma-informed schools movement, philosophies, pedagogy fit beautifully in this model of moving away from domination to partnership. So historically in American education, and I think really for the most part worldwide, historically education is really built on a control and compliance mindset, which is a domination system where teachers power over very, very much top down. The trauma-informed work really moves towards, you know, this caring and empathy, understanding students, meeting the needs of the whole child, moving teachers from, you know, the dominant, you know, leaders in learning to more in a facilitator role where students are learning partners, and it's student-centered education where students really do the heavy lifting first, and student voice exceeds teacher voice. So I'll talk a lot more about that, of course, but really the domination to partnership framework is such a perfect match. So a friend and colleague of mine said to me the other day, in the midst of our current situation worldwide, wow, this is what you were preparing us for in training us about, you know, trauma and trauma-informed schools. And Riane, your canary in the coal mine analogy for the trauma-informed schools movement, I think is really spot on. So this is what we in my large system have been preparing for about 5 years now. The world has changed, and we're working to craft new ways to move forward. And we have a whole lot of work to do here in Metro Nashville Public Schools and in Tennessee for sure. We have our work cut out for us, but I feel that we are more equipped and more primed to be able to do that in a positive way because we've laid the foundation for this trauma-informed schools work. So this is a powerful time. I believe that our current situation in the world, in the country with the pandemic, is a strong opportunity to really shift the priorities of education. Of course, also the economic system, as Riane also mentioned, but I really think that as a result of this, we're going to have a lot more leverage going forward to change the way education looks, to change the way we schedule our school day, to change expectations of our educators and our students, and really focus much, much more on the whole child, because that's what these times are calling for. So before I jump right into it, really, I'm going to spend my 15 minutes talking about the initiative, the project that I conceptualized, the work that I lead in the school district. So Metro Nashville Public Schools is amongst the 50th largest school districts in the country, so we're huge. We have about 86,000 students. Majority of students are considered economically disadvantaged. We have about a 76% economic disadvantage rate. We also have about 10,000, more than 10,000 staff. So we're like a city in and of ourselves in this huge school district that I'm privileged to serve. So some of you who are a little bit newer to this work might, a month ago, maybe not today, but a month ago may have asked, you know, why on earth is trauma an educational problem anyways? We're here to teach kids academics, reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? But we do know that childhood adversity or adverse childhood experiences, you see the acronym ACEs on my slide. We know that these things are highly prevalent. Riane spoke a little bit to that. We know that childhood adversity absolutely can and does occur universally across all walks of life. Everything that, you know, traditionally has felt that we're different, like gender or socioeconomic status or religion or race, all of those things. Trauma can and does occur universally across all of us. However, the access to healing is not necessarily universal. We know that historically marginalized groups may be impacted in larger ways. We also know that different groups are impacted in unique ways. For example, in, you know, maybe in a more affluent home, maybe secrecy, privilege buys more secrecy as opposed to a more economically disadvantaged home. So it's not that it doesn't live there, it's just that the specific characteristics may be different. We also know that this is often an invisible epidemic. Right now today, it's quite visible. We can see what's happening in our world today and how it's impacting everyone. But the symptoms are often counterintuitive. So if we don't know what we're looking for, we might misunderstand what's happening. Before I leave this top point, especially on the second bullet around universal occurrence of trauma, I really want to reiterate something that I said a couple weeks ago in our last webinar. Equity is one of the most important things that we can consider right now. So the impacts of this pandemic, this current societal trauma, will not be experienced the same way for all kids. For many or some of our kids, they may feel like, well, they just had a great vacation, an extended summer vacation where they were, you know, in a house full of love, where they got, you know, exposed to lots of fun activities and more family time and, you know, got some time off school. Whereas in other households, kids may come out with some pretty intensive abuse or really, really hard experiences. So equity is really important as we consider universality, even though, you know, the current pandemic is going to impact everyone in a stressful way. It's not equal. So what we really operate on is the premise on the bottom of this slide. So we know that educators spend a tremendous amount of time with kids. We spend more than 15,000 hours with kids from kindergarten through 12th grade, sometimes more time than their parents because they're sleeping at home. We know that educators have tremendous power to either you know, take kids and families who already have pretty distressing lives and further that distress, even re-traumatize in worst case settings with these models of domination and control and compliance. Or the reason we do this work is that educators also have tremendous power to buffer the impacts of trauma, to mitigate stress, to cultivate healthy development and promote resilience and post-traumatic growth in their students. From the neurobiological science, which, you know, Riane talked about some, but it's outside of the scope to go into too deep. But if we could look at the brain, we would know what Dr. Mark Brackett from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence said. This is one of my favorite quotes, but he said, the neural pathways in the brain that deal with stress are the very same ones that are used for learning. So if we as a country want our kids to achieve more academically, we can't do this if they're not emotionally healthy. So in the emergent school-based research around trauma, we do know that in comparison to students with 0 known adverse childhood experiences, kids with 3 or more are at least 3 times more likely to experience academic failure, 5 times more likely to have significant attendance problems, 6 times more likely to have significant school behavior discipline concerns, and 4 times more likely to have somatic health complaints like my belly hurts or my head hurts that can't otherwise be explained by a medical diagnosis. And the fact of the matter is that their belly does hurt and their head does hurt, and the underlying root cause is stress. So there's so much we can do in the school setting to really mitigate that. So this is one of my favorite ways to talk about, you know, theoretically, to talk about what it means to be a trauma-informed school from the Attachment and Trauma Network. So first and foremost, there has to be shared awareness between all stakeholders involved. Educators work to find this understanding with parents and students themselves. But trauma-informed schools really focus on these 4 things. And the first is fostering a sense of safety, a felt sense of safety for all stakeholders in that building. And I'm not just referring to physical safety, I'm also talking about emotional safety, behavioral safety if behavioral mistakes occur, academic safety, you know, fear of, you know, not being perfect and that kind of stuff. The second one is connection. So all stakeholders feel this sense of connection, and our school environments become relationship rich. Positive relationships are a huge focus. The third one that's often missed in traditional, almost always missed really in traditional school practices, which Khayree will talk a lot about as well, is staying regulated. So explicitly creating a context in which all kids and teachers, adults, learn how to stay regulated. They have time to practice those things, time to use those things on the spot as needed, and we're teaching and practicing explicit strategies. And then of course, learning. Of course, we focus on learning. So before I go into our project, which I'll just overview very quickly, I want to really talk about the power of collective impact. So something that's really unique that we're doing here in Metro Nashville schools in comparison to the fantastic work that's going on in many, many other individual schools around the country, we're really, I really designed this initiative to promote widespread organizational change. So what we're talking about here is not just shifting one classroom or not just shifting one individual school, but shifting an entire city-sized school district, shifting the entire system so that all 169 schools have partnership-oriented culture and climate. So in order to do this, we really have to leverage the power of collective impact. So collective impact is traditionally defined as multiple sectors, multiple stakeholders from different sectors coming together towards a common goal to solve a highly complex societal problem. So the framework that Riane was talking about with the economic system, with other sectors in addition to education, is completely relevant here. But given the fact that we're such a huge school district, and because I was engaged in community level multi-sector collective impact work, it was a no-brainer to me in kind of designing this this work. That in a school district, there are multiple angles, right? A wide variety of professionals. And if we can get all the different professionals, teachers, principals, bus drivers, cafeteria staff, school counselors, you know, a myriad, to make small shifts in the way they go about their day-to-day work, then we're really moving the needle. So we work very intentionally with a wide range of departments, teams, community organizations within the district to really affect greater change and also sustainable change. So my team, the Metro Nashville Public Schools Trauma-Informed Schools team, there is me as the coordinator, and I do have 6 trauma-informed specialists, but by no means are we doing this work alone. As I just said, we're trying to do this work in partnership with, you know, more than 10,000 other staff and 86,000 kids and, you know, countless family members. But we do operate with 3 primary goals. So I'll talk through each of these things quickly as kind of the meat of my presentation. So the first goal is that we're promoting widespread organizational change through widespread awareness. So we do a whole lot of training. We have readily available, readily accessible training for every school in the district, also community stakeholders. Basically anyone who asks, you know, we work with agencies, we work with universities, as well as each of our schools. The second thing, major goal, is that we support trauma-informed school culture shifts and implementation of these trauma-informed practices at schools throughout the district. We do hone in a little bit of a more intensive way on a select group of focus schools as well. And then the third primary goal that shapes our work is called Handle with Care, which is a notification system that we implement district-wide. So I'll talk about that at the end. But around our training, basically we provide extensive training about healthy brain development, what all kids need to be healthy and whole, and then the impacts of toxic stress and trauma and how it can derail school success and lifelong health and wellness. So that's kind of our foundational training. You've got to understand the why first. And then the bulk of our training is around trauma-informed school practices. So I'll talk a little bit more about what those practices look like shortly. But right now, some of our really hot trainings are trauma-informed de-escalation, teacher self-care and wellness is a huge one. We've also been doing a whole lot of training with students. So we help facilitate a lot of like student wellness days, teaching some of the mindfulness practices that Khayree has exposed us to. But over the past 5 years, I've used a train the trainer model where we've got over 75 trainers in the district that help us. Of course, we do a ton of the training ourselves, but just numbers, you know, I'll kind of weave in some outputs and outcomes as I talk. We've trained over 15,000 folks. That number is probably closer to 17,000 now. I have to update the slide. About 11,000 of them are whole school faculties and staff. And like I said, we engage a whole lot of community stakeholders as well. So around the trauma-informed practices, I mentioned a couple examples, but the types of things we're really looking to see implemented at our buildings. The first, it can be framed in these 6 practices on this slide, which comprise kind of a framework that I've created. If you're an educator in a school, if you worked on these 6 things for say the next 3 years, you'd be well on the way to the process of becoming trauma-informed. I wouldn't necessarily recommend jumping in with all 6 at once. You can pick 2 or 3 that resonate with you and then over time build. But this is really a process, not an overnight, kind of canned intervention. So the first one is really focusing on safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments, but giving teachers and educators strategies that really like turn positive relationships into a practical strategy. Because theoretically, we can talk about that all day long, but we really aim to give teachers very specific things to do to facilitate that. The second one is looking at our physical environment. So the image on this slide kind of shows a lower stress physical environment where we've muted the harsh fluorescent lights, or we've looked at the sound, we've looked at how overstimulating the decor is. So that's kind of an easier quick fix, is shifting the physical environment to be more trauma informed with calming colors and those kinds of things. The third one has kind of been mentioned and will be mentioned more, but this is really important. We really explicitly teach kids and teachers stress reduction practices, and then integrate the practice of those things into the daily school schedule. And now that we've explicitly taught some of these calming skills that help kids reduce their own stress, we've regularly practiced them so they have the skills in their repertoire. Now we move to number 4, which is carving out regulation spaces, commonly referred to as peace corners, in every classroom so that they can use those skills on the spot when they're feeling, you know, anxious or stressed out or mad or hangry or any of those things. And then the 5th one has to do with how we manage challenging behaviors when they occur, because behavior is very common in classrooms. And so we really aim to teach and equip teachers to respond to symptoms of stress and dysregulation versus punitively reacting to problem behavior. And then finally, the 6th one that has been just such a huge push over the last couple of years, and really is the most important part of this work. Number 6 includes systematic strategies and supports to help with adult self-care, to promote educator wellness, because it's so important that the adults have their needs met and are able to stay regulated themselves. So really the most important part of this work is an adult mindset shift and an adult ability to manage their own stress. So a lot of our training focuses around these 6 things. And then we work really hard to support implementation of these things in our schools. So my 6 specialists and I, we offer, you know, on-site consultation and technical support. So we're there to meet individually with teachers to help with their individualized needs for themselves and their students. We'll observe students and attend meetings. We, of course, make recommendations and assist with safety plans. We model a lot of implementation of interventions with teachers, and we really focus on helping teachers feel supported when we're going about any of this consultation. And then we do hone in on a select group of focus schools. So it's evolved and shifted over the years. We started out with a highly intensive pilot school. The current year, we have about 20 schools who are committed to ongoing training and professional development, but also school-wide implementation of 1 or 2 trauma-informed school practices. So the first one of those is peace corners in every classroom, right? So it's not just one classroom, but class-wide, school-wide. And then the second one is this twice daily stress reduction practices integrated into the daily schedule. Again, not just in one classroom, but school-wide. So this becomes common language in all schools. Side note, we distributed about 600 Peace Corner starter kits in the fall, and that's, I think, the 3rd year in a row that I did that. So I'm kind of known, or we're kind of known as the fidget tool lady, right? So the picture, the image on the bottom shows, like you saw Khayree at the beginning of the video, with a Hoverman sphere that helps assist with breathing. These are, you know, koosh balls and fidget tools, mindful coloring books, those kind of things to help equip peace corners to give kids skills to mitigate stress, as well as teachers, by the way. So I included a couple videos in the slide to illustrate these 2 things, peace corners and the twice daily stress reduction activities. Unfortunately, I don't have time to show the videos in the webinar right now, and I knew that that was going to be the case, but I wanted to include the links to these 2 videos in the slides because they'll be disseminated to you afterwards. And so I do hope that those of you that this resonates with, that would like to implement them in your setting, that you go back and view these videos. but I just wanted to give a testimonial from one particular principal. She wrote Tulip Grove Elementary is in its 3rd year implementing school-wide peace corners. Students have really taken to this calming strategy. It's not only served as a de-escalation strategy to prevent behavior issues, but it has also served as a regulation strategy for students who are anxious. And parents have even commented to me about the value of peace corners. So I have a whole collection of testimonials like that show, and I'll share a couple more in a minute. Some outcomes, I do want to say it's really important that we also measure social emotional health and how kids feel. So if we say that we care about social emotional learning or trauma-informed practices and all we measure are academics, kids are going to know and teachers are going to know that we're lying. So we do, I don't want you to get too distracted by the writing on that slide, but many of our schools do also measure things like how their students report that they feel. For example, do you feel connected with an adult in this building? Or do you feel a sense of belongingness and acceptance at school? Many of our buildings actually ask kids that to hear from them, and that can drive the practices that we implement. We also do measure school culture and climate district-wide from the teacher perspective, the parent perspective, the student perspective. So we really do measure social emotional outcomes. This isn't just lip service, but we have found kind of a hard factual outcome. We have shown reductions in both office discipline referrals and out of school suspension. So that's pretty important for the positive operating of a school building, that when behavior problems occur, we're not so much handling it punitively as we're supporting in a more restorative approach to helping kids be successful. And then finally, the last main goal, the last main thing that we spend a lot of time on is a program called Handle with Care. So I partner with the Metro Nashville Police Department. By the way, this program comes out of West Virginia. It's a systematic notification system, so we got it from them. But on a daily basis, essentially, the police department notifies me and my team of any school-age child in our county who has been a witness to or a victim of a potentially traumatic incident outside of school that results in police involvement. And then in turn, we notify the corresponding school and school staff on a daily basis. We don't give any details about what happened. Actually, I don't even get that information from the police department. We just notify the educators who work with that child in real time, hey, this kid just witnessed or experienced a potentially traumatic thing. Let's handle them with care. And then of course we provide a whole range of suggested ways. We offer consultation and support to help them do that. So one example of that, this is a high school principal that wrote and said, I just wanted to say thank you for having your team send us the Handle with Care notices. It's been surprising how many times we've been able to help a student or a family as a result of our gentle follow-up after getting the email. And it's just a check-in. They don't say, hey, we know something happened. They just say, hey, are you okay? So last week, a student from a non-native country let us know about tension in the home that led to a domestic dispute. This is over his father sending most of his earnings back to their country of origin to care for those left behind, leaving the family here often without enough food or resources. The social worker was able to respond right away and help pair that family with the resources they needed. And she said, we would have never known about this if it weren't for the notice. Please keep up the good work. So this notification system is really helping real people in real time, not only supporting emotional health and mitigating stress, but also connecting with real physical resources as they need it. So just real quick, some numbers. The first year that we implemented Handle with Care in the district, we had over 2,500 Handle with Care notifications. Last year, we had over 2,800. This school year to date, as it stands today, we're still getting them, still got them today, even in the midst of, you know, what's happening, we're over 2,900. So our numbers are sky high. I just wanted to end with a couple testimonials really quick, so you could hear from some more educator voices, not just my own, but one in regards to the whole trauma-informed schools approach, the 6 strategies of the other things I've talked about. This principal, I've worked with him across 2 different schools that he's been the principal of. He wrote, learning about trauma-informed practices has changed the direction of 2 schools I've served. We've religiously implemented peace corners and seen the effectiveness instantly. Students are more aware of their feelings and able to identify when they're about to flip their lid. They're able to use the peace corner in each room to identify their feelings and self-regulate with strategy options that are most effective for them. Our teachers have become more aware of how their own trauma and stress affects the way they lead students, and how self-care is so important in one of the most challenging occupations. And from this middle school, they really honed in on both student and adult wellness. The SEL specialist at this particular school said, our administrators prioritize both teacher and student well-being. They encourage people to take care of themselves and have built a school community where everyone feels comfortable asking for help, advice, and support. Then the next teacher, a 5th grade teacher, talks about her students. She says, one thing I'm so impressed by is the students' ability to name the stressors they're feeling. This is something that even adults struggle with. They're able to identify exactly what is causing them stress and then match it to a pre-taught emotional management strategy to help them calm down. It's exciting for me to watch them work through these emotions in productive ways. And then perhaps my favorite quote, because he's really getting into the adult wellness and the adult capacity piece. He said, I've been amazed at how the MEGS SEL initiative, and it's a trauma-informed schools initiative as well, aimed at helping students identify and manage stress, has become an important life skill for the adults in our building to embrace as well. All of my student testimonials were in my office and were kind of prohibited from going to the Board of Education right now. So I couldn't provide a specific student testimonial, but when we host these student wellness days where we provide a lot of training or just facilitation with students, they are chomping at the bit for more, and they say things like, wow, nobody's ever really talked to me about how I felt about these things before, or I want more of this. Can we please do more of this? So I really think that this can help guide the direction we're going. So I'm going to wrap up here, but I think going forward, because everyone in our society now has been impacted by a brand new trauma. Really, everyone has at least one trauma over the course of the last month. And many, many people in our world will have many, because some of the social effects of this pandemic might lead to increased, substance abuse, increased domestic violence, increased abuse, those kind of things. But really going forward, everyone's going to be able to relate to what trauma and toxic stress feel like. And I think that gives us a powerful opportunity to really use these times to create the partnership education systems Riane was talking about. So collective trauma is something that none of us wanted. And I sure wish that we weren't the canary in the coal mine. I wish that we weren't preparing for what we now have upon us now. But collective trauma can also lead to collective connection, increased collective caring and empathy, increased compassion, increased capacity in knowing how vitally needed it is to hold one another up, to help one another make positive meaning, help kids be resilient, and be more empowered to use these times to grow stronger and create more meaningful ways of living. So our work will begin, continue, and end with fostering resilience and empowerment. And that's what the trauma-informed movement's all about. So I'm so excited to now turn it over to Khayree, where he's going to talk about what this work has looked like on the ground in his classroom.
Thank you, Mary and Riane and Sarah. I am on. Good. Okay. I'm going to kind of go over what it looks like. Like Mary says, she's showing you from a perspective a little bit bigger than ours. I am part of probably one of the largest school districts in Delaware, Colonial School District. We're out there responding to the needs of the community right now. We have a feeding program going on. We're making sure that they have meals over the weekend. Our school was already a 1-for-1, so most of our students have a laptop, a Chromebook, and we've gotten out, I'd say 2/3, if not more, of all our students now are equipped with some type of device. We're working on that equity piece because we are just like Mary's district. We are a underserved community, a red line community historically. And I also want to back up what Mary says. A lot of our kids, they've been living in trauma for a while, and this is just going to add to the pressures, anxieties, and stress that they deal with. And as an educator, I know every day I'm dealing with the secondary trauma of what these students are going through in their neighborhoods. My wife's school is going through some tough times too in its neighborhoods with a lot of gun violence and people just in desperate times doing very desperate things. So I also believe that the trauma that's going on is causing the districts, the community, families to lean on our teachers, counselors, the nurses as such that are out there on the front lines doing this. So I'm going to kind of get away from the slides and I'm going to show you kind of what it looks like and what we've done in our school. About 4 years ago, I was given the opportunity to kind of implement a equity-based, trauma-informed, and poverty-informed class. I was a health teacher at that time. I had built up a very good relationship with the community. I have a lot of family in the community, so it was kind of easy for me to do. A lot of the kids, they just don't see me as a teacher. I'm probably called Mr. Bey less than anything else. I'm probably called Dad and Uncle and Pop because of what what's missing in a lot of these kids' lives. So I really bank and hang my hat on being very keen on relationships. Before you can educate a child, you have to meet them where they're at. And our kids are coming to school after dealing with trauma. So you're dealing with a child that is now coming in for food, clothing, and shelter, which they may not be receiving back at home. And I make it a point to check in with them. I'm going to go through some of my slides, which are pictures from my class. But as I was saying, I was given this opportunity by my principal all the way up to my superintendent. And who's now our superintendent, he was also very key in giving me this opportunity and also giving our children the opportunity to be exposed because they are not exposed to these type of practices. Where they're from, a lot of them have never left their neighborhoods. You're not going to see a lot of yoga studios or places where that they can go and get some type of positive serve in return from someone. So this is something very important to me, and I really wanted to make sure that this was something that was given to our population of students at Colonial School District. I'm going to kick it over to sharing my screen here. And I believe we're up, right?
Yep.
Right. Now, this was my idea when I was first given the opportunity is I wanted to create a mind-body fit club and incorporate the health curriculum with it. So I wanted them to understand nutrition, decision-making, all the typical, the rigor that would go along with health and PE or any of the other subjects that are out there in the core. So from there, I wanted to make sure that our kids had some type of self-regulation type skills. So I wanted to teach them how to regulate themselves when they come from these different neighborhoods and communities where they are definitely flipping their lid. So one of the first things that I wanted to do was get them in a place, hold on, let me scroll to the first one here. This was something that I came up with for our students to create some type of self-regulation skills, and it's called a McCullough staff breath. And what I wanted them to do, because a lot of our kids, they are quick to go to physical violence to handle the smallest issue. If it's somebody stepping on their shoes, because I mean, that may be the only pair that they get for that school year until maybe a birthday or Christmas may come up, and then all of a sudden they may get something else. So they are very territorial on who they hang with and how they present themselves. So one of the first things I wanted them to do was find a self-regulation technique, and I came up with the staff breath. And that meant stop, take a breath, analyze the situation, focus on a positive future with you in it. And it's something that they were taught at the beginning of their, when they first come into my class. So also when they first come into the class, they are given, they walk into the room. I want them to kind of identify where they are physically. So when they first come in, I kind of made an emoji board there. You can also see I have the salt lamp there. They come in, they check off where they are as they come in. Other students are able to see exactly where the class is kind of looking at, feeling at. Sometimes we have 8th graders come down, something has happened upstairs, and you'll come and you'll see that they're in a high arousal. So I kind of know where to meet them at as they're coming in. I also wanted to make my room kind of that safe zone that Mary was talking about, where, and let me grab a quick slide. I want to look at her slide right here, where we can, the students, they do not see themselves in these self-regulation or self-care type scenarios. It's something foreign to them. So as I created my room and created a safe space, as you can see, I have different things that I use. There's choice seating, where not all children are going to sit at a table there. If you can see on the slide, I don't know if I can point to it, but some of the chairs have the therapy straps. So some of the kids that are a little bit fidgety, they kick at those. I also have yoga balls that some kids kind of sit on that don't want to sit in the traditional chairs. I also have, there's a little red, so like a wobble seat for some of our kids that are on different spectrums there. I also wanted to make the things in the room match the population of students that we have. So as you can see, even with teaching them the flip your lid hand gesture, I kind of made an interactive smartboard, interactive word wall rather, where the kids, as we learn different things, I teach them the growth and fixed mindset, which also goes along with how I teach them are you listening to your inner coach or are you listening to your inner critic? And it kind of places them in the opportunity to make that choice, where you can choose your response instead of reacting to the outside forces. And that brings me to another portion of the word wall, where I'm also giving them the beginnings, or I like to call it an intro to MBSR, mindfulness-based stress relief. And with that, since I deal in middle school, these guys are a little bit different than when I'm in the elementary, when I travel to some of the elementaries in our district, where you can get them with the body movement, you can maybe play the bell. They're a little bit more receptive to come in there at that age. My middle schoolers do not see this as something that they feel as if they are a part of. So for me, being from that community, looking like them, it gives them someone to go, hey, this is possible for me. It's pretty funny. I have one of my students, they used to call me the anti-vax soccer mom, because they couldn't see me being an African-American male being into yoga or the mindfulness. So they're like, only anti-vax soccer moms practice yoga or have salt lamps or diffusers. So again, it's something that I think my district is getting right, is we are starting to bring in more teachers of color, teachers from Latino backgrounds to kind of match the population that we are dealing in. And that's where the equity piece goes on, because I get a lot of kids who would have never went down this path. And I think at first my idea was I didn't even want to do what you see me doing now. I had no plans on teaching adults. I was like, this was for the kids only. But as I journeyed through this, you see teachers are going through secondary trauma, and they need that, they need the self-regulation skills also to deal with what they're dealing with these students. And I think Mary really hit on it, was as our districts, as our nation and the school districts start to follow this trauma-informed script here, they're gonna see that you have to take care of your teachers. They are on the front lines there, and it's almost as if they've been trained for their skill set of being an educator, but they were not taught how to deal with the children that they are now receiving. And me coming into education late, my wife has been teaching about 23, 24 years. When I got into teaching about 8 years ago, it was not the same schools that I had been to as a child myself. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I think that's a good thing, because we need to start changing with the needs and demands that are coming. No different than what we're doing now with this pandemic. You have to meet the students where they're at. And I think as administrators, as coaches, as district people, DOEs, you have to also meet the educator where they're at, because not everyone's equipped to deal with the students that they are dealing with now. And I think, again, because of what we have going with this pandemic, the light has been shined on the work of people like Mary and Riane and all the other champions that are out there that I get a chance to work with, from DOE to DSEA to even a Holistic Life Foundation. These guys have been putting in great work and giving out great resources. I know we're getting short on time, so I also want to make sure that I get a chance to show you some of the highlights that we're doing here. So let me start from the beginning. Again, this is my class. As I said, a very diverse bunch. We also have elementary students in schools that are brought to my school. Now, I've done something with our planetarium that has gotten me a lot of publicity, is that I do mindfulness in a planetarium. They trained me a couple years ago, and my thought was, how can I implement what I do in a planetarium? I'm the health teacher. I'm not the science teacher or the astronomy teacher. And I figured that I was going to take my kids in there. A lot of them don't get a chance to go and look at the stars. And I take them in there, we dim the lights, and I speed it up a little bit, and they watch the stars. But some of them, I do get to close their eyes, and we do about a 10 to 15 minute body scan with them. As time has gone on, I've also done this with staff, because again, the staff is dealing with secondary trauma. And I was noticing that on twice a month on Fridays, after some tough weeks there that we were going through, I offered a meditation to our staff. And from there, it took me on to the, and I'm going to scroll through these as I'm talking here. This is the great staff. And when I tell the students, the first staff that I want them to rely on is that stop, take a breath, analyze the situation, and focus on a positive future. But I also wanted them to identify a trusted staff member that they could go to. And if they didn't have one, I would gladly be that person. And if you go to my school, there's many people would tell you, I reach out to the kids a lot. There's a lot of teachers that when children are in their tough moments, they send them to me to kind of de-escalate or help them get some regulation skills. So I want to give a shout out to a lot of great teachers in my district and in Delaware that are doing a great job in the trauma-informed care. These are some of the other gentlemen. We do a lot of mentoring of some of our tougher kids. This is our gentlemen's club. We have a couple female teachers that pull in some of our female population that are really dealing in some tough times. And I also reach out to them a lot also. Again, these are pictures from my room. Try to make a safe space. In the back of my room, I have a cool out corner, which we are starting to implement in our school. We are really pushing this year for a responsive classroom. This pandemic that has happened has kind of thrown off our plans, but we have implemented that within our 6th grade as a school, and our numbers as far as referrals, kids being written up, you can definitely see the difference in the numbers. I wish because of the pandemic, I haven't been able to get to my school to get a lot of my resources also. Again, here's some of the tools that I use in my classroom to make it least restrictive. On the right there is a chair that has little mats. I bought these mats at Walmart. They're just greeting mats that you would get at the door. I cut them in half. And some kids, when they first come in, it was kind of me tricking them into getting them on the mats in the back to do yoga. So I would have these mats. They have the little prickly things on the bottom, and our kids kind of take their shoes off and they can get comfortable when they come in my room before we get to our lessons there. And you can see the therapy straps at the bottom. Again, this is the back of my room, and if you could see, I don't know if it's possible, but a lot of the pictures on the wall are kids, people of all different races and sizes, because I didn't want it to exclude any child. I wanted them to see themselves in this practice, and I wanted them to be able to take this practice home. Again, here's our planetarium. I had it set up right before the pandemic happened. I was going to be doing a session in there with our 6th graders. I also use different types of music. This is a mindfulness music mixtape with lo-fi music that goes along to kind of bring a soothing aura to my room as the kids come in. I have my lights set to a certain, a lot of times it's off and it's lit up by natural light. And I also have the diffusers and things going. This is some of my other students from last year when I first started the practice. And this was my 8th grade. I thought I was very skeptical if they were going to participate because they come from a rough background and they do not see this as Riane states. This is not masculine to them. So for me as a former Marine, a kid that grew up getting into trouble as a young man, that they recognized that it was not just for those people, it was also for us. So I wanted them to see themselves in the practice. And again, here's some of my students from last year practicing. I made rock mats to, again, just to do the reflexology, to introduce them to some other forms of self-care. They used to always, one of the things I say when they leave, I always tell them to kick rocks. And then I brought in the rock mats and told them not to kick rocks anymore when they leave my class. But they definitely enjoyed the experience. This is outside of their norm. Here's some more practicing on the rock mats. Going down to the elementary level in my district, once I started doing this, a lot of teachers were like, can you come to the high school and elementaries and do the same things? And we also have the Leach School. We have a lot of children that are severely handicapped. I bring them in and do sessions with them. I did a summer school with them and did a lot of yoga with them one year just to introduce them to the MBSR type mindset. Again, this was a mother-daughter night where they were introduced. They came in, were able to practice mindfulness with me, and I gave them some self-care practices to take home with them. This was a great opportunity here. We had all of the librarians from across Delaware were brought in by the Deputy District Director. Her name is slipping my mind, Ruth Ann Riane. She came in one day just to see our schools. They were going to put all of our books on, digitalize our books. And she came into the planetarium and seen what I was doing in there and asked if I could train her staff. And from there, that kind of opened me up to going, I needed to go into the community and not just in the school. So I opened it up to doing PDs for her. From there, moved on to people in the community, different pastors and clergymen and different youth centers and bringing them in and training them in the neuroscience that I had learned myself through Mary, who came to Delaware last year through Terry Lawler and Deborah Stevens. They really, they are big advocates for trauma-informed care. They have really been leaders in getting the different school districts up and running on becoming trauma-informed. I say most are around trauma-aware, trauma-sensitive, getting to trauma-responsive, where they are responding adequately to what's going on there. Again, this is them doing the brain architecture game, which I think is an outstanding opportunity for any school that is trying to implement trauma-informed practices in their districts. And to get into the kind of the equity real quick, because I know we're getting short here. When I first came to the district, I had my former principal, and now she's the assistant superintendent. She had an idea, and myself and a few others have helped her bring this to fruition, where we are really pioneers in spreading equity throughout the district. And we have a lot of support from the community, the school board, and staff in my district. And we are going out there really trying to match what our trainings that we go to. We go to the HBCU meet and greets to bring in some of these young teachers from diverse backgrounds so that they can get an opportunity to be examples and pillars in the community for these children. And with that, I'm going to kind of bring this to an end. I know we're running short here, and I don't want to go over our time. I wanted to be able to answer some questions. I'm going to also give some resources towards the later on afterwards, so this can be posted tomorrow for everyone to receive. Again, I truly believe this is an opportunity for us all to change the paradigm that we've been living. And like someone said at the beginning of this webinar, the system that was run before was inadequate at best. And I think if we grasp this opportunity with pioneers that you see on this panel, and there's so many out there that are probably even in the guest list right now that are watching, that are out there doing great work, continue to be that champion for the trauma, poverty-informed equity, because this is exactly what we need at this moment. And I think Mary really hit on it. This is what we've been practicing for a while now. And now it's time to use those tools to bring some peace to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Khayree. We'll bring us back now to see all of us together here. We clearly had so much content to share with you. We have used all of our time. And thank you all for your comments and questions in the chat. I think, well, let me check in with Mary and Riane and Khayree. Would you be up for doing some email responses to folks who have shared questions in the chat?
Yes.
Sure, of course.
Okay. Oh, and Riane, you're on mute.
I really think that I want to thank Khayree and Mary so much. I also want to thank Sarah and Anne for making this possible, and I want to thank all of you for coming. I think somebody suggested that maybe we do another webinar showing some of these things that were talked about in practice. So let's talk about that after this, if you're interested, Khayree and Mary, because I think this is so important. And this is our opportunity, isn't it?
It is.
So thank you, all of you.
So
Thank you.
as just a final word, again, thank you to all of our panelists, each of you, the combination of hearing how your genius at each level of this system issue fits together and supports each other is really beautiful and inspiring. So thank you all for that. I want to just say out loud what Anne has been repeating in our chat box, which is that you can expect within a day or two that you will get a link to the recording of this webinar, as well as the link to the recording of the prior webinar that we've referenced from 2 weeks ago, which speaks more specifically to the COVID-19 epidemic. You will also, in that follow-up email, receive the slides that you've seen today, as well as pages of other links and resources that Mary and Khayree have been, and Riane have pulled together and have been kind enough to sort of, Anne has really been instrumental in helping to pull all that together for you. So you'll find all of that in your email inbox coming up as soon as we have an opportunity to put that all together for you. And we thank you again for being with us today and for all of the really good work that you are doing in the world now and always. So be well, everyone.
Be well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Be well.
Be well. And we'll see you.
We'll see you again.
That's right.
Stay tuned.
Stay safe and healthy, everyone.
Yes, do take good care of yourselves.
And we're all in this together. So no, we're here. We're out there rooting for you.